case, a couple weeks ago, I rang a friend. I said, hey man, would you come over to Experts Academy and teach some of this Ninja podcast stuff? Because I think I get it. But even for me, a lot of the momentum happened because I talked about momentum marketing and the leverage of emailing. This was the person who called me as it started going, goes, mail your list, do this, do that, don't do that. And bam, we were number one. And had he not probably cued me to do those things, no way. He was the person to tell me, where do I put my podcasts, right? How do you get them on iTunes? Once they're on iTunes and they're running, how do you get people now to give you their name, email, contact? How do you make money with all that? That's his thing. He's been doing this pretty much since podcasting has been around and really well known for it. And so it's one of these cool things about my role in the industry is I can usually call people and say, hey, I got an event coming up. Would you come and share what you know and how you do it with my audience, especially in the areas, these sort of more technical types of things that I like to bring the pros and the experts. It's Experts Academy. So I bring in the experts to share with you what they do, what they know, what courses they have that can take you to another level, or what strategies you can put into play right now that will bust through for you. And that kind of stuff is invaluable. It's my favorite part about being in the industry. It's like any topic, I can usually pick up the phone and get to the person and say, hey, I got this amazing audience and they want to know how to do this. They want to do it better than I did it. So what do you think? So I sought out this person, gave a call. He changed 2 trips to be able to get here and hang out with us. This guy is so awesome. He's so giving. Every time I call him and ask him something, he's like, do this, don't do this. And he's probably the guy who I would say in our industry is always the most technically savvy. Because he has this thing about him where he always knows the new thing. There's a new strategy, a new way to do things. And he just told me an idea backstage. I'm like, gosh, I didn't know you could do that yet. So he's super savvy at this. Some of you have seen him out there in the podcasting world before, teaching and training. He's at the social media conferences all the time. He's an absolute genius, a total great giving guy. His courses are rock solid, and the guy is just super genuine. And he lives in Portland, Oregon, so you know he's a badass. In this house, if you could give an Experts Academy welcome, we have Mr. Paul Colligan is in the house.
Thank you, man.
Paul Colligan!
Wow, look at these guys.
Have fun, brother.
Thank you, man. Look at you guys. All right. Thank you. I'll take that. Thanks, Mom. All right. So, I had a day job. Anybody have one of those? It was sucking the bloody life out of me. Anybody have one of those? It was the year 2000. The year 2000. 3 people got that joke. That's why he went to TBS and not NBC. The one thing that got me through it was a company called Audible. Anybody know Audible? Electronic book on tape. Now at the time, I had I can't remember what they called it. It was a Microsoft thing. The memory was terrible. I could get about an hour and a half of a book at any one given time, but that was my commute back and forth. And that was my walks down by the river. That was anytime I could get out of that office and learn something, make myself better, become the expert that I wanted to be. It was Audible that did it. I got an email one day from the CEO of Audible, Don Katz. Don goes, hey, I'm coming to town. And we do this thing where we find our oldest customers. And I buy them dinner. Can I buy you a steak? Okay, couple things. A, I like Audible. B, I like steak. C, I like free steak. So I show up, and he says, yeah, I guess the other guys couldn't come. Oh, poor, I didn't ask for 4 steaks, don't worry. And tell me about Audible, Don. And Don told me about this future of connected devices. We were gonna listen to amazing content. His device is actually in the Smithsonian. A lot of people don't know that. He was there first. And he told me we're gonna be able to put not just, 3 hours on a device, we're gonna be able to put 300 books on a device. Is that really coming? Yeah. At the time, I had a product. I wanted to launch. I needed distribution. It was an audio product. They are an audio company. And I'm having steak with the president, and he's paying for it. So I say, Don, got an idea. I need distribution. You need content, because that Harry Potter thing you're doing, where's that going to go? And I said, so I'd like you to put my product, Front Page Secrets, on Audible. Anybody remember Front Page? I was the guy. And he goes, no problem. Really? He goes, yeah, I know, we got a program for people like you. Oh, this is amazing. He goes, yeah, 500,000 down. Okay, thank you, Don. Appreciate the steak, good night. So, what was funny was 5 years later, this guy, anybody remember Headbangers Ball? MTV? It used to stand for Music Television. Look it up on Wikipedia, okay? There was this guy named Adam Curry who was from Holland. You remember Adam? Adam was a big nerd. So A, metal, B, nerd, C, awesome. And I hear about this thing he's invented. The guy from Headbangers Ball with that awesome hair, he invented podcasting? He did. He and his friend Dave Weiner, another big nerd. And it was funny because the nerds, they saw podcasting as, oh, this is the ultimate distribution for the RSS platform with MP3 enclosures. I mean, that's what you were thinking, right? But I thought to myself, wait a minute. This is Audible without the licensing fees. And Audible required Audible-ready players. Podcasting was anything. Okay, this is gonna get good. You guys with me? Yes. All right, let's pass out the worksheets. I just got a simple one-page worksheet for the process that'll kind of set you up with everything. I'm gonna give you a tour of podcasting. I have 1 hour and 15 minutes, so we gotta go fast. So I started playing in podcasting. I had a great time with podcasting. It was fun. I got invited to go to Google. Google does this thing called the Google Tech Talks. And the Google Tech Talks are basically their version of TED. They bring you in. Everything you hear about the campus is true. It was amazing. It was Disneyland for nerds, okay? And I got to do a tech talk, and it was fun, and it got recorded, and it was a beautiful time. I got to do that. I did a show called The Profitable Podcasting Show, where we talked about, guess what? Profitable podcasting. And there are several millionaire podcasters who to this day will go on record as it was the show that got them to do it. So it was a great show, had a great time. I did a course called Podcast Secrets. Anybody in the room a Podcast Secrets alumni? The thing was, I did it back in 2008. But perhaps one of the coolest things I did a book called The Business Podcasting Bible. And the thing about the Business Podcasting Bible was this book, and you could see Leo with it. Leo was at the time sort of the pioneer of podcasting. He was the one who kind of really standardized it amongst the nerds. Believe it or not, the Headbangers Ball guy didn't necessarily do that. And this was the book, very proud of it, but this thing came out in 2006. I get email every week, Paul, I bought your book, it's good, but you didn't mention the iPhone. And I hear podcasting has something to do with the iPhone. So can I call you and pick your brain for a couple hours? Yeah, it happens all the time. So the Business Podcasting Bible in 2006, it was a good time. But what happened was, it was still pretty nerdy, which, is good for me, but not necessarily the mainstream. But you guys are thinking that podcasting's left nerd town, we're in mainstreamsville. What happened? Here's what happened. 4 things happened. Smartphones. Attractive, inexpensive, at the store, portable. We put our podcast on it. Anybody have a smartphone in the room? Raise your hand. Enough said. Right now, there are more smartphones in America than there are dummy phones. It's true. There are more internet-connected televisions than there are televisions not connected to the internet, okay? And it's good science. It's by a reputable company, not somebody trying to sell connected televisions. Smartphones, cheap data. Data used to be really expensive. When I started in the internet, I had a $1,500 a month internet bill, okay? And I got it for a steal. It was about $6,000 a month worth of internet connectivity. I had more internet in my office than all of Russia did, okay? Data got cheap. My daughter, on our family plan, gets a gig of high-speed wireless data included with her first week with the new lips, first week with unlimited minutes, unlimited texting, a gig of high speed, unlimited low speed for $10 a month. It's crazy. Cheaper tech. The tech got cheaper. Now admit it, everyone's going, okay, podcasting, but you know those audio guys, they got those microphones that make you sound like a radio guy. Those microphones aren't cheap, Paul. See this bad boy right here? This is the Nessie by Blue. This thing retails, I've seen it sometimes under 100, retails $199. This has all the processing to do that big voice when you speak into it. It's a USB microphone, plugs into your Mac, plugs into your PC. If you buy a $40 adapter, it plugs into your iPhone, okay? The tech that used to cost thousands. You know, when I started in podcasting, I could only dream of high-definition video cameras that were half as good as every one of you who raised your hand about that smartphone video camera you have. The tech got a lot cheaper. And then some big names started doing it. Brendon, Burchard, for instance. People started doing podcasting, became more and more mainstream. Apple sold more and more. Really, when it comes down to it, we owe a debt of gratitude to these two people. Steve Jobs. I remember the day when he announced that, clear as a bell. And it was so funny because everybody read it very differently than I did. I read it as, you know, we can make a smartphone that doesn't suck. People might like that. That was really what the iPhone launch was. And we all did, and we owe it, we owe so much to that man. And then over here, T-Mobile, owned by Deutsche Telekom. They started doing unlimited data as part of the plan. There used to be basically, it was a smartphone tax. You know, you could buy the phone, but then you had to buy the bigger data plan. You don't have to do that anymore with T-Mobile, and it's starting to roll over to everybody else. So the combination of smartphones that don't suck and cheap data, we're in a brand new place. So what am I able to do with this phase 2 that we're in? Well, a lot of you know, I do a lot of work with YouTube. I've got a book about YouTube. I've got a book about podcasting. Very big still in Amazon, both in the top 10 in advertising. One point they were #1 in multiple countries. You see that ranking right there? Amazon author rank. At one point during one of the promotions, I was the #1 author in all of Amazon for business and investing. #1. Thank you. Once again, Mom. And sold a few more copies of that than I did the Business Podcasting Bible. I'll tell you that for sure. Done very, very well for me. Up there at the top, there used to be an internet television channel called Revision 3. They were a podcast channel. They were one of the first. And, well, used to be, Paul, see proof. Yeah, they used to be Revision 3 because now they are Discover Channel Internet Ventures. A podcasting channel got bought by Discovery Channel. Yeah. People are looking for this content. This content is ready to explode. I got to do one of their live shows, the Unplugged show. They wanted cranky old tech curmudgeons. Look up this video, my favorite troll comment in the history of YouTube, and I quote, "It's dudes like this guy that are ruining tech for everyone." My favorite review ever. iTunes announced last year, 1 billion podcast subscriptions. Okay, for those of you who don't know what a subscription is, it's actually just like a subscription to a magazine or to a newspaper. You basically say, every time there's a new episode, every time there's a new piece of content, send it to me. So 1 billion times, people have said, every time there's a new Brendon Burchard episode, send it to me. Every time there's a new Paul Colligan episode, send it to me. Every time there's a new JJ Virgin, send it to me. 1 billion times. Who wants a piece of that? Raise your hand. Okay? Crazy, crazy things have happened. Then, in a world dominated by radio, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this guy named Brendon Burchard, who launches to #1 in iTunes, beating PBS, beating national radio. Why? Because of a really intelligently executed plan. Now, I'll tell you, I was pretty proud of Brendon. It was fun. We were up all night. It's like, you go to sleep, I'll monitor the numbers. No, I'll monitor the numbers, you go to sleep. I mean, it was fun. It's just like, it's like our version of racehorses, okay? I mean, the pulse is racing. It's just, we're gonna make it #3, yeah, #2, yeah, chill the champagne. But what was funny was, when I got to #1, the vice president of the hosting company that Brendon puts his stuff on calls me and goes, "That was you, wasn't it?" "Yep." "Who's Brendon? Who's next?" This is where the industry is going. Brendon got a lot of attention, a lot of downloads. Who thinks if they were #1 in their industry for a little while, that could be good for them? Okay? I'm gonna tell you exactly how we did it. Exactly. You into that? Yeah. Okay, so where's it going? Keep watching. So, in the early days of podcasting, the first podcast expo, I think there were like 60 of us. We fit the entire podcast expo. When we're done with the expo, we all fit into the bar across the street. At the first podcast expo, I posed the question, if we can be anywhere, who's the media anymore? That's what you think about that for a second. If you can be anywhere, who's the media anymore? So, today we're gonna cover, and this is what you got in your worksheet, you can follow along, 6 points. #1, WSWNW. That is a framework I use. It stands for what, so what, now what? We're gonna take a look at podcasting from those 3 questions. And we're gonna take a look at what it is, what do we do with it, that kind of thing. The 6 pillars of podcasting. See, there are a lot of people who podcast, but they have no idea what they're doing. There are 6 pillars. If you follow them, by the way, is that framework thing that Brendon was talking about? You bet it is. Okay? The 6 pillars of podcasting, we're gonna take a look at all 6 of those, what they mean, what do you do about them, how you respond to them. One of them actually has Brendon's picture on it, which is kind of fun. And then, where's podcasting going? Because this is really important. Because the funny thing is, we're not even halfway there. It is exploding. I'm gonna show you a slide, and I'm gonna see so many light bulbs go off on the heads over this room that I'm going to be blinded. And then I can sue Brendon, and it'll be great. But then there's always the but. You're gonna be doing that already. You're thinking, he's got that radio voice. Certainly not the face for video, but he has the radio voice. There's gonna be the buts, and we're gonna talk about the buts. We're gonna deal with the buts. I like the buts, I cannot lie. Thank you, all right. So, few of you, another obscure 80s reference, okay. We can definitely age this room. Then, some fast hacks. Things that you could do with podcasting really, really, really quickly. We're gonna hit 4 of those, and then we're gonna chat about your podcast, because I think it'd be pretty cool when you do your podcast. So what is podcasting? Podcasting is 3 things. Boy, is he doing that alliteration thing just like Brendon does? You bet I am. Why? Because it works. Podcasting is 3 things. It's content, it's connection, and it's continuity. Who has content in this room? Raise your hand. Yeah. You are creators. Creators create content. So, it's content. Now, it's content online. Why do you put it online? Because you don't want people coming over to your house to, borrow your CD. All right? Well, what kind of online is it? Doesn't matter. It's really simple. It's really easy. Many of you will be able to host your podcast for less than $20 a month. Content online is the first part. The second thing are connection options. You gotta give the type of directions so that iTunes knows whenever you have a new episode, because there's a billion people who said whenever there's a new episode, tell me. So you wanna send those connection options to iTunes. Makes sense. And you wanna send them to all the other podcast directories, and we'll chat with some of the other podcast directories. There's some of them I dare say could potentially be more exciting than iTunes. Yeah. Content online, connection options, and then continuity paths. You see, a lot of people they think of podcasting as just media online. They think of it as like YouTube, like this video here or this audio here or whatnot. There's that subscription thing. And no, that subscription thing is very cool. Because you say once, I want to hear from this person every time they release something new. So Paul, are you saying that if I put up a podcast, they can tell iTunes that every time I do something new, notify them? Yeah? Everybody do that. Put your finger up here. Gets interesting. So podcasting is content online with connection options with continuity paths. You don't have to get subscribers, but what would you rather have them listen to? One thing or everything? Exactly. So continuity is very good. Let them know. A lot of them don't know. So how do they know? Well, this is the great part. You tell them. So you give them a lot of great information. You go, you know what? I do this every week. And we can send it right to your phone. Here's how. Very, very exciting. So those are the continuity options. So what? See, the first part was so, and so what? So what? Platform independence. This is cool. Notice how I didn't say who has an iPhone? Although most of you in this room have them. Platform independent. Podcasting works on the iPhone. Podcasting works on the Android phone. Podcasting works on the BlackBerry, all 7 of them that are left. Okay? Podcasting works on the Windows phone, all 3 of them. Paul, does podcasting work on the XR2500-D5? Yes, not the D4, but the D5. Okay? There's no licensing fees. There's no costs. They work on all the phones, all the devices. Oh, what about the tablets? All of the tablets. What about the televisions? All of the televisions. What about the Sony Blu-ray connected? Yes. Works on all of them. Paul, I can create content that works on every single connected device on the planet? Yes. What's the licensing fee? There's none. What's the catch? Now you see why I'm kind of excited to be here. Thank you. I'll take that. Now, it actually gets better than that, because who thinks that free promotion from Apple would be desirable? Okay? Free promotion from Apple. Who thinks a web page at apple.com that links directly to your website would be viable? Okay? Pretty cool. And then the last thing, anybody ever notice that when they send email, nobody gets it anymore? You had this problem, this deliverability rate thing? Podcasting is 100% spam proof. 100% spam proof. Who likes them apples? And these are the crunchy kind, not the company computer. So what's pretty good? We're at a pretty good place here. So what does this really mean? It means anyone, any place, on any device can consume your content. If this doesn't send chills down your spine, you are dead. This has never happened before. I don't know if anything this crazy will ever happen again. Now, it's always been this way. The problem was that last box, the any device box. You know, I would ask how many people in the room had a device, and only a small amount of them did. Every one of you has a smartphone. You know, about 75% of you have a connected television. Most of you have a tablet. Most of you are able to consume me on multiple devices. Show one on this one, show 2 on this one. Anyone, any place, any device. So now what? Well, let's get your podcast live, huh? Let's get your promotion from Apple and others, and I'll show you what the promotion looks like in a second. Let's get you an audience. Sound good? Sound good? Yeah. There we go. So, let me show you this. And Brendon hasn't seen this slide, because I like to do that kind of thing. This is the management and marketing area of iTunes this morning. A fairly decent industry. See this thing called new and noteworthy? They're listing Brendon as new and noteworthy. Okay? Isn't Brendon a self-help podcast? Isn't he in the health area? Yes. Somebody realized that he has a pretty decent business following as well. Well, how did he get there? Who did he know? Paul, did you call the guy at Apple? Here's the cool thing. If you have a subscriber, about a dozen of them, in the course of about 24 hours, you are considered new and notable. For how long, Paul? 6 weeks. Oh, so good. Oh, so good. And they will pick you up and they will put you in other places if you match, even if you didn't identify yourself as that. So Brendon's not just new and notable in health. Brendon's not just new and notable in these others. He's new and notable in management and marketing. Paul, are you saying that I launch a podcast and I get everybody in my row to subscribe to it? That's enough to trigger new and notable in iTunes, and then when somebody's looking for a podcast in my area, I will be on that list? Uh-huh. Pretty cool, huh? I think so. All right, so who the media? You the media. Let's go back. Who the media? Okay, turn to each other. Person A say to person B, who the media? Person B say to person A, you the media. Now this is where it gets good. Person A say to person B, no, you the media. I'm a creator, and I'm the media. Booyah. That wasn't there, but I'll take that. So now, you guys want to see something really cool? All right, you really have no choice. Let's be the media, shall we? Rode microphones. These are one of the premier microphone companies. They've really done the podcaster space well. They have a thing called The Thing. It's on a later slide. I can't remember the name of it right now. Deal with it. I'm in front of a live studio audience. And what it is it's a lapel microphone that plugs into your smartphone. A high quality lapel microphone that plugs into your smartphone. So Paul, are you saying that somebody can take a smartphone, plug in a microphone, put it on their jacket down here because they have a really loud booming voice, turn on their phone, click a button, open up an app, and record a podcast? Is that what you're saying, Paul? Well, let's see. I'm not sure. Hey, everybody, this is Paul Colligan. Welcome to the Thinking Out Loud podcast, where I, Paul Colligan, actually, yes, get this, think out loud. Now, each episode of the podcast is done differently. Sometimes I use a different mic. Sometimes I'm in a different location. Actually, today, I am in San Jose, California, at the Experts Academy. Say hi, Experts Academy. Hi! Now, we're peaking a little bit. The volume's a little crazy, so I'm going to move the microphone a little bit away from me. That's what happens when you mic yourself really, really loudly. I don't necessarily recommend recording your podcast this way. But in today's Thinking Out Loud, I want to share with you what happened yesterday. Yesterday, I was at Social Media Marketing World down in San Diego, California, and at the keynote, there was some discussion about the world of podcasting and where it's going, and here's what's interesting. In a survey of marketers, specifically social media marketers, they asked them how many of them listen to podcasts. 96% of the room listens to podcasts. They asked how many of these social media marketers are producing podcast content. Only 6%. See, in your cars, 20 minutes by yourself to and from work each day. What are you going to listen to? I hope it's you. See, my thought today in Thinking Out Loud is there are a lot more people listening to podcasts than there are actually creating podcasts. That is called an opportunity, my friend. And everybody listening to the Thinking Out Loud podcast, I want you to consider doing a podcast of your own. This has been a live recording of the Thinking Out Loud podcast, a podcast where Paul, gets this, thinks out loud. Today I was using the Rode lavalier mic. I am heavily microphoned right now, so the audio might not be best, but there we are. I will see you on the next episode coming soon. Now, the next part would be really boring, so I'm not going to do that in front of you, but I'm going to click a button that says publish. Who can click a button that says publish? I'm going to fill out a form. Who can fill out a form? And it'll say things like, what episode number is this? And I'll say, No, which episode is it? There we go. I'll say episode 30, and I'll say what I'll talk about. I'll say cars and content. Basically, I will fill out this form on my iPhone, and it will make a podcast out of it. But it won't just make a podcast out of it. If you were to listen to that podcast, you'd hear the little, you hear the little music thing. It also, and this is really good because I really did a bad job with the audio, it's gonna bring down the volume so it doesn't peak. And it's gonna take out background hums, and it's gonna bring it to a solid level, and it's gonna put the graphics on it, and it's gonna publish it to iTunes. The robots are going to do all of that. Oh yeah. Now, you could do that yourself, but you know what happens when you do the work the robots should be doing? The robots win. Don't let the robots win. That's gonna be everybody's take home. Don't let the robots win. Who thinks they could talk into a phone? Anybody ever done this before? It's a new tech. It's kind of crazy. Who thinks they could fill out a form, publish a podcast? This is incredibly empowering. And the amazing thing is, once I do that, remember that whole subscription thing? People's phones all over the world are gonna start getting pung. That's the past tense of ping. People's phones are gonna go, new episode from Paul, and they're gonna click play. And before I'm able to walk across the room, the downloads are gonna start to happen. 100% spam proof. Everybody. As a content creator, this just drives me. The whole world, on whatever device they happen to have, can listen to whatever it is that I got for them, can listen to whatever it is that you've got for them. I've dedicated all my pro career to helping people expand their reach by leveraging tech. That's what I do. I did it with web design. I've done it with YouTube. I've done it with this. Who can leverage this kind of tech to expand their reach? All right? I want you to do this. Woos are okay. This is exciting. This is empowering. This needs to be part of what you're doing. So, the pillars, there are 6 pillars to podcasting. And the first pillar is plan. It's that alliteration thing. I keep seeing that theme, Yeah, that's what you do. The first step is plan. And the best part is when I take people through the process of building a podcast, this plan part is the part that gets them the most frustrated. What do I do? But the great thing is you guys are going through the best 4-day program on the planet. You know what your content is. So we can go over this whole plan part really pretty quickly. The one thing you'll have to do in your planning is just figure out what your frequency is. You can do it every day, you can do it every week, and do it every month. That's all you have to figure out. You know what your content is, just figure out what your frequency is. Then you gotta produce. And production needs to be what I call ease casting, okay? There are people I know who spend 15 minutes on the content and 5 hours on the production. Needs to be the other way. 5 hours on the production, 5 hours on the content. You know what I'm saying. First week with the new lips. Develop a method of making your podcast that's easy to who you are. Some of you, that will be plugging the microphone into your iPhone or your Android or your BlackBerry, that one guy in the last row. Some of it will be taking the Nessie, plugging that into your device. Some it will be calling your 12-year-old daughter to flip the switches. Some of it you'll be going to the studio. Whatever's easy. Look at your neighbor. Whatever's easy. Go ahead. Okay? That's ease casting. That's how you're gonna produce. Editors are cheap. We put an ad in the newspaper. We needed a video editor. We said, look, we just need somebody functional. We don't need an artist. We don't need anybody looking for a career. We just need somebody functional. And we got a response back. I'd like the position. Oh, what have you done? Well, I do have an Emmy for editing. Okay. Just curious. Why this gig? Well, it's better than the gig I've got right now. Editors are cheap. Be authentic on your show. Who's been listening to Brendon's podcast? That's the real Brendon. The question I get there's either 2 questions I get about Brendon. Question number 1 is, how many times have you gone? I've gone like 4, okay? The second question I get is he like that in real life? Okay, be authentic. It comes through. And it is very intimate. If you think about a podcast, A lot of times, they've plugged you into their ears, you know? They're going for a walk with you. They're going for a run with you. They're going on the drive to work with you. It's a very, very intimate experience. So be authentic. And then the other thing is be predictable. See, if they like you and they tell iTunes, give me some more, you want to hence give iTunes more to provide the gimme. Be predictable. All right, then you promote. You got a show. You figured out how to do it easily. You got the plan, you got the frequency, you promote. Now, what do? Well, you let them promote you. Well, what do you mean? Well, if you publish a podcast to iTunes, iTunes will put you on New and Notable for 6 weeks. That's pretty good. If you call your podcast something related to, let's say, your industry, people search, they might find that page at Apple. You guys saw my book, YouTube Strategies. I just launched a podcast called YouTube Strategies. I know, crazy. We had a whole marketing division figure that out. We outsourced the whole thing and came up with that. We were gonna call it some other things, but we went with the YouTube Strategies name. But here's the thing. If you're looking for YouTube Strategies and a page at Apple comes up, would you pay attention to that? If someone was searching for what it is that you do and what it is that you're the expert on, and a page at Apple came up, would they pay attention? Very interesting place to be. Social, you know? We all make fun of how much we like to do things like, check out what I ate for lunch, you know? We have this feeling on social that we have to say something. Well, something worth saying is I got a new episode. People love those. I got new content. I'm gonna give you something to be social about. Paul, I can use Twitter to tell people that I have a new podcast? Yeah. Well, wait a minute, Paul, there are those people who search for topics on Twitter. Yeah, that four-letter word. So, Paul, are you saying that if you told Twitter that the latest episode of YouTube Strategies was available, somebody might search Twitter for YouTube Strategies and find out about your podcast? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So use social. Reward sharing. Have people share. Tell people to share. Encourage people to share. I've seen some podcasts where they say, tweet me, talk about my show, and I'll find you, and I'll talk about you on my next episode. Oh, reward sharing. Always reward what is good for your client to do. Email lists are always great. If you've got an email list, send them an email. New episode's out. You know, that reciprocity thing. Boy, you send 52 emails about a new episode each week for a year. Boy, they are there. They are with you. They love you. And boy, that 53rd email can be a good one. No, they're all good. It's all good content. Look at you guys. Best looking group I've worked with yet, by the way. There we go. That group last week, man. Oh. Pillars 1 through 3, plan, produce, promote. I have seen people, I've worked with a lot of podcasters, you know, they show me their logo, their t-shirts. What's your show about? Don't know yet, but we got a good name. By the way, it's not a name that anybody's looking for. I see people who got a plan, and then every episode takes them about 4.5 weeks to produce. They don't get that far. Plan it, produce it, promote it. Those are the first 3 of the pillars. Say that after me. Plan, produce, promote. All right. The next 4 are manage, multicast, and merge. Manage. All right. What's working? Which episodes do they like? Which episodes do they not like? Well, how do I know? Well, you can do things like say, if you'd like more information, text your name and email to X. You can say, send me an email. Maybe you have a show hotline. Visit a website. Remember, though, if people are listening in the car, don't encourage them to surf the web, please. But boy, if they're listening in the car and you gave them a phone number they could text, they're running on the treadmill. I've heard people do that. And they hear about a phone number. They can pull out the phone. They can text. They can do that. What's working? What isn't? What's faster? What's better? You know what works if you actually design it to make sales and do these things. You manage the whole thing. Then you multicast. Now, I've got a book out called Multicast Marketing. The basic idea is that you got to produce it at some point. I mean, it's kind of the laws of physics. Podcasts don't come from the stork. Might as well produce it live because there's an audience who loves to watch stuff happen live. Face it, that's why you're here. You know, you had the DVDs of Expert Academy, but no, I want to see this live. There's a group who loves it live. So you got to produce it at some point. Why don't you produce it live? There's this thing called YouTube that'll broadcast you to the entire world in HD for free. Might as well do that. So take your content. You don't have to go live if you don't want to. That stuff terrifies you, great. But everything Brendon said, you know, that thing he talked about, when the camera's going, you can start over and over again. If you're live and somebody's watching, even if it's just mom, you'll keep going. So live's an option. Take it. Bookcast it, take the transcripts, make a Kindle book out of it. Social cast it, tell the world about it on Facebook, tell them about it on Pinterest, tell them about it on Twitter, tell them about it on Plurk. For goodness sakes, everybody rush to Plurk and sign up for the 825th social network. But if there are people on Plurk, if your audience is on Plurk and you tell them you got an episode, you can do that. Mobile cast it, send it to them. Wait a minute, yeah, I could collect their phone. And then every time there's a new episode, I could text them, couldn't I? Yeah, especially if they want that. Yeah, I could do that. That would really, really work. Automation's the key. See, if you're doing all this yourself, again, the robots win, and that's bad science fiction. But if you automate the process, you can get these things out pretty quick, then you can do that. So you definitely want to multicast. And finally, you want to merge. There's a concept called the one-eared Mickey Mouse. Visualize a circle with another circle on the side of it. It's Mickey Mouse with one ear, okay? Most people podcasting, that's their strategy. They have their whole business strategy, and then podcasting's over here. And it's funny because you'll hear them say things like, podcasting is one of the most rewarding things I do because I get to connect with my audience. Well, how does it make you money? I don't know. Stop it. That's the managed part. Figure it out. Call to action, not that complicated. You've been learning about that all weekend long. You're going to learn more about that. Make it part of your platform. Make it a slice of your revenue pie. Who doesn't like pie? Pie. Sorry. JJ's in the front row and I talk about pie. It's like coconut. It's all good. And make it the favorite part of your week, you know? It's funny, I talk to people who are like, oh, there's only 5,000 people on my podcast. Yeah, how many times do you speak in front of a room of 5,000 people? You know, and you get to do it every week. Just think about that. You know, pour yourself a cup of something, green tea, that good? Green tea. Some coffee, a glass of Pinot. There we go, give it up. There's a wine slide in here coming soon. But it's red, it's all good, it's all good. And realize that you're connecting with your audience in a way you never could before. You're connecting with them on their walks, when they're at the gym, when they're in the car, in the earbuds. It's a great time. Make it the favorite part of the week. The monetization models. How do I make money? It's a great question. It's fine. It's really not that complicated. There's three methods. There's indirectly, directly, and integrated. Indirect. You do a podcast, some pretty cool things happen. And I have a fun slide. Yes, I have a fun slide next about my favorite indirect gig in the history of podcasts. It'll make every one of you want a podcast. So I might as well just know. So indirect, writing gigs. Well, you seem to be the expert on this. Would you write an article for me? Would you write a book for me? Many people have gotten book contracts because of their podcast. Many people have gotten the ability to do guest blogging and that type of thing because of their podcast. And boy, you do those links, and you link them back, you do a call to action. Writing gigs is great, speaking gigs is great. I know podcasters who started podcasts about topics that they loved because they could never really go to the convention, and then they get invited by the convention to speak at the convention with their heroes. Joint ventures. I mean, think about it. If you had a product for moms with red hair, and there was the Moms with Red Hair podcast that had 10,000 moms with red hair, do you think you might call that podcast a JV? Podcasting is a great way to do JVs. And then free stuff, and we'll chat about free stuff. It's a really big part of podcasting that not a lot of people talk about. Direct monetization, coaching. If you'd like more, we got a coaching program. Let them know that on the podcast. People do that really, really well. A sponsor, affiliate sales. Both those options are there. Why they're in one line, I have no idea. Products and services. You can sell stuff. Your own, other people's. Am I allowed to sell on a podcast? Who's gonna stop you? The podcast cops? Step out of the iPod. Masterminds. If you are the leading authority on a topic, by the way, who wants to be the leading authority on a topic? And you have a podcast every week about that topic, recognized world round. I mean, for goodness sakes, you are at apple.com. You can do a mastermind. Joe Polish does it. You can too. Integrated. Advertorial content. Your content in your podcast can become information about what it is that you do, what it is that you bring to the table, how you do these things. You know, Brendon mentioned Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey's content is all advertorial. Everything he does talks about his programs, talks about his systems. He does it in an entertaining, educational, informational way. It's not sleazy, but it's just strategic. By the way, pick strategic over sleazy every time. Okay? Advertorial content's great. Premium podcasting. There are ways to sell your content via a podcast. It's not that big of a market. A lot of people just kind of see podcasting as a free model, but if you had a membership site, I mean, think about it. The big problem with membership sites is they got to go to the membership site. What if the membership site went to them? Ooh. There's tech to do that. So indirect, direct, and integrated. Now, check this one out. This is my favorite podcasting story ever with a bullet. The show is called Grape Radio. It's 6 guys who wanted to write off their wine habit. So they built a studio. One Saturday a month, they pour the wine and they talk about the wine. And you can tell, yes, it's true. And you can tell which episode they are by the amount of laughing going on during the show. This was the last one of the evening, wasn't it? There's a thing called the James Beard Award, given to the best of the best. They got one for their show. That's not the awesome part. Here's the thing. If you like, and red only, they'd never talk about whites or heaven forbid that champagne nonsense. I mean, come on, sugar, really? Okay, so people watch the video of this are going, what's going on? Does he have an imaginary friend in the front row? And when you have a James Beard award-winning podcast about wine, you know what happens? People start sending you wine. By the case. Now, they started getting the wine. The quality was okay. But then they added this disclaimer. I love this. Grape Radio does not solicit samples of wine-related products. Should a vendor decide to send samples, Grape Radio's acceptance of such samples does not imply evaluation will be conducted. I.e., if they get some and they need a housewarming gift, they can just pull something off that the UPS man, here we go. In addition, I love this. In addition, should Grape Radio decide to evaluate a sample, vendors are advised that Grape Radio does not warrant such reviews will be made public, i.e. they get so much stuff they can't do it all on the show, nor that such reviews will be positive, i.e. don't send the crap. Only send the good stuff. Oh, that is so cool. Wineries go, well, we were going to send them the crap, but the disclaimer, no, we're sending them the good stuff because we want to get on the show. Oh. I mean, being an expert's one thing, but free wine, you know, and the good stuff. I love these guys. All right, so who do you want to send you stuff? Talk to your neighbor really fast. Who would you like to send you stuff? Just, let's dream big. We having a good time? All right, back up here. Buddy of mine does a nerd. Back up here. We only got a little bit left. Buddy of mine does a really big nerd show called The School of Podcasting. Big nerd show. He has a segment on there called Because of My Podcast, where people call in and say the cool things that happened because of their podcast. I got invited to the show. I got a free case of wine. I got recognized on the street, you know? I actually had somebody recognize me at an airport for one of my podcasts in front of my daughter. Score. Oh, Daddy was doing the dance. Daughter's going, oh, Dad. It was awesome. So case study number one, Brendon's number one run. So we positioned Brendon for a number one run. Here's how we did it. Anybody want to know how we did it? Because I don't have to tell you. We believe, that the algorithm inside of iTunes is like the algorithm inside of Google, like the algorithm inside of, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Coca-Cola. It's a secretly guarded formula. We don't know for sure, but we do know what we do know, and we do know this, that it seems like the majority of the ranking comes from the amount of subscribers that have happened in the last 24 hours. And I've done this 14 times, every time this test has been confirmed. But also, if you look at it, it's a little bit logical, because if you look at all the shows that are top ranking, they're all radio shows. And radio shows always end their radio shows by saying, subscribe to my podcast. So every day, these radio shows are saying, subscribe to my podcast. Isn't any reason why NPR is number one, okay? So we promoted to Brendon's list, please subscribe now, so we could get a bunch of subscriptions. That's what we did. That was basically it. What happened was fun, was we made it to number one in all the categories, but it was fun here in the middle. We made it to number one in a bunch of countries. He wasn't just number one in little old tiny America. No, he rocked the Finland too. There were I don't remember the number. Brendon, if you're backstage, you can yell it out, but I think it was 8 or 9 countries that we were number one in, okay? Press, attention, bragging rights. Brendon Burchard, author of the number one top-selling New York Times bestseller. Brendon Burchard, author of the number one downloaded podcast on iTunes. These are becoming as important as real. Now, you guys want to know a dirty little secret? You don't need a lot of podcasters in the course of 24 hours to rank really well in your category. Let's just say that I did an experiment. Just say, I'm not saying I did, but let's just say we did an experiment where we sent, it's so sad, 105 people to a category to subscribe to a podcast, and 105 got them number one in their category. Not for very long, but get the screenshot and you're good, okay? Admit it. Okay? But you do get the runoff. People look at it. People people go, they buy their iPhone, they go to the Apple store, and the Apple store says, well, what do you like? And they go to the podcast. Oh, look at that. It's a show by so-and-so. I'll give that a try. Keep that going. Make that part of what you're doing. That's part of the whole managed thing. Make it part of your email. Every email should be subscribed to my podcast. When they call your company on the voicemail, while you're waiting for us, why don't you open up your iPhone and subscribe to our podcast? Brendon spoke to the greatest hits of Facebook and Twitter that you want to do over and over again. Subscribe to my podcast. It should be a regular basis. It's not something you do once. You have that happen on a regular basis. You can make number one status, you can ride number one status, and you can continue to be in the top 10. It's not that complicated at all. There are certain categories where podcasts in the top 20 have not had a new episode in the last 3 years. Okay? You can do this. So that's the number one run. Joe Polish. Anybody know Joe? Joe is the most psychotic person I've ever met in my entire life. But the funny thing is, he's one of the few people that if he calls, I pick up the phone. He usually insults me, but then he says something very, very nice afterwards. Joe has a show called I Love Marketing, which is an amazing show. Joe, to know Joe is to love Joe. Joe has a hard time getting focused. We have friends of Joe in the front row. The I Love Marketing show tends to go a little long. We have fans of the I Love Marketing show in the front row as well, apparently. But it's okay, it's so good. It's so good, it does well, and some episodes, hundreds, thousands downloads. I mean, it's an amazing show. But we did the second show. We had a show called 10X Talk. Took Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. Dan is the guy who can tame Joe. We got them together. We did a format for a show, about 30 minutes per episode. And Dan keeps Joe on track. And they do it in a studio. Sometimes, the really cool thing is, sometimes they're not in the same studio. Sometimes they're talking into a really high, powerful microphone to get the good recording and talking on the phone. But the great thing is all they do, remember the ease casting bit? All they do is they go in and they record, and then it goes to the sound editor. And then somebody writes what the bullet points were, and then somebody sends me the file, and then I optimize it, and then we put it up, and we schedule it every other Wednesday. Okay? The show is doing gangbuster numbers. It's incredibly respected. People are loving it. But what's funny was I looked at the stats recently, and I was looking at all the countries he's downloaded in. And remember that any place, any person, any device, anywhere? Anybody know the country Turkmenistan? I wasn't very familiar with it. I looked it up. You know what the first thing in Turkmenistan is? Is the freedom of the press report. They've banned YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, but somehow Joe's podcast is getting there. One ISP in the entire country, only about 2% of the country is hooked up to the internet. One ISP is still owned by the Russians. Actually, it's Cyrillic alphabet on the website. Yet, Joe's podcast is getting there. It's amazing. Boy, you know, you want to have the impact with the person next door, love thy neighbor, but man, we are in a world economy. And your stuff can go anywhere. And it's a great show. I recommend listening to it. It's fabulous. That picture actually isn't even, that's a Photoshop job. That's two different pictures of the two guys. But isn't that a great look? I mean, even if you didn't know who those guys was, that speaks authority. If you saw that in business and management marketing, you'd look it up. So every country with a color on it, they've been downloaded in. It's amazing. Phenomenal job. It's a great podcast. I really, really love it. Case study 3, Thinking Out Loud. That's the podcast episode you were there for the recording of. I wanted a podcast to kind of show. I do it a lot on stage, but every 6th or 7th episode, it's usually me on stage recording an episode, different times, different ways. It's a test. I test microphones. I test a whole bunch of stuff. It's just a fun format for it. But I can literally get an idea and have a podcast out in less than 8 minutes. Okay? It's optimized. It sounds good. Sometimes you'll hear me, sometimes, hey, this is Paul, and this is the Thinking Out Loud episode, and I forgot my microphone, so I'm on my cheap Chinese knockoff earbuds that I bought 8 for $1. So if the audio is not that good, please understand, but I still have an idea I'd like to share with you. Sometimes you'll get an episode like that. But from thought to idea, I can get it done. One of my favorite things to do is I go visit a friend, and then I'll do a Thinking Out Loud episode in the car, and then I'll stop the car at Starbucks. Is that okay? Okay. I start Starbucks, and I'll type in the form, this, and we talked about this. I'll hit publish. By the time I make it into Starbucks, the podcast is live, optimized with the graphics, with the music. It's amazing what you can do now. Now, is it the highest quality podcast content-wise? I mean, you heard episode 30. It's not my finest work, okay? But it's a proof of concept, and maybe for you it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 20, but this does not have to take over your life. You know, let them visit with you every week at a certain time, and then realize this is your audience, these are the people who know you, who like you, who trust you. Boy, you think about who's listening to that, you think about that guy who's walking down the street with the earbuds on listening to you, think about that mom who's put you on for the 3 minutes that the kids shut up. Kids are wonderful. They are. I have to erase this part before I show this video to my daughters. When you think about who you're podcasting to, just take 30 seconds before you hit the record button, and it's an entirely different podcast. And you can do it very, very quickly. Thinking Out Loud is an example of that. So, when you're the media, the system works for you. This is really, really important. You know, Oprah at one time was the media. You are the media now, and the system works for you. We got systems now that'll clean up the audio. We got companies now that will distribute you. We got companies now that'll track you. You got people who can do this for you. When you're the media, the system works for you. Who is tired of working for the system and would like the system to work for them? Oh man, this is so cool. One of the fun things when we ran Brendon up the charts, it was so fun to see who he just beat you know, and to see who was in front of him, you know, so it'd be like Rachel Maddow on one side and then like Dave Ramsey on the other or something, and, you know, but climbed up the charts and left them all in his dust. All right? You can do the exact same thing with your industry. Who would like to do the exact same thing with their industry? Now, this slide is perhaps the most important of the entire deck. There are 3 technologies. Technology number 1 is Apple CarPlay, okay? Apple CarPlay is a technology by, I know, Apple, that integrates the podcast platform of the connected devices, the iPhone, the iPad, with a few car companies. Ferrari, Honda, Hyundai, Jaguar, Mercedes, Volvo, BMW, Chevrolet, Ford, Kia, Land Rover, Nissan, Toyota, Suzuki, and Subaru. So Paul, are you saying that in a year, people are gonna be buying Subarus that have a connection to my podcast in them? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How do I get a piece of that? Well, tell Apple where your podcast is, and they will do the rest. I've seen a couple of people in the front row going, I'm gonna get up and leave now. But he might say something else cool. Stitcher. Who's heard of Stitcher? Raise your hand. Okay, interesting. Stitcher, who's heard of Pandora? Raise your hand. Okay, exactly. Pandora is a model where you say what kind of music you like. I like the 80s hair band metal, okay? And then what happens is it will play random 80s hair band metal songs to you, or songs in that style, and you give those things a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it begins to build you, it begins to know you. It's really, really cool. Now, I like the 80s, surprise. And I got in the car to come to the airport. I kid you not, I flipped on Pandora, and you know what it played? The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. Pandora, and it's amazing, when you've trained a Pandora station, it's a beautiful thing. Stitcher is Pandora for content. Oh. Give me some of that. So you say, I got a 20-minute commute. I'm into health. Send me some stuff. Podcast A pops up. Give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. Podcast B comes up, thumbs up, thumbs down. It learns what you like. It automatically subscribes to things for you. It makes your playlist just like Pandora does. Paul, are you saying that if my stuff's good because, comma, my stuff is good, comma. Punctuation's very important. I could put my stuff on Stitcher, and people who have no idea what I am or what I do, who are interested in my topic, can find me? Yeah. I heard a whoa. Now here's the cool thing. Stitcher is gonna be integrated in Ford, Mazda, BMW, and Chevrolet. So you saying somebody buys a BMW and they get free access to me as a bonus? That's exactly what I'm saying. I have some conspiracy theories that if you get enough red wine into me, I will tell you where I think this is going further. But these are the official announcements, okay? There's another company called Tunein. Tunein's not quite as big as Apple or Stitcher, but they're important as well. They have signed contracts with GM, Ford, Mercedes, BMW, Mini Cooper, and Tesla. Paul, that's pretty much every freaking car company on the planet amongst those 3 people. Are you saying? Yes, it's exactly what I'm saying. Put back up the slide again, if you would, for a second. We are at a time now where people are going to buy big metal boxes with access to our stuff that take them where they want to go. Oh, it's a good time to be alive. What's going to happen to radio is a question you should be asking. Go ahead, ask yourself. That's a good question. Glad you asked. iTunes radio, which, by the way, is a beast. It's doing amazingly well. iTunes Radio just signed on a little startup called NPR. Are you saying now that people can listen to NPR without The towers and the radio waves? Yeah. Paul, that's pretty much the only thing keeping radio alive, isn't it? Yeah. Huh. It's really all going into the car, and I can be part of that, can't I? Yeah. Paul, I want to be part of that. Yeah. That's where it's going. This is where it's going. We're going to enter the age of the expert podcast. It's going to be your face. And you're going to serve your audience in ways they've never been served before. They're going to love you dearly because, look at you. Very lovable. And good looking, I might say. And they're going to get into their new BMW or their new Tesla or their new Ford. And they're going to go, I want something about this. And if they find you and your stuff's good, which again is not a problem because your stuff is good. That's a great thing. I go to rooms, their stuff isn't good. This room, it's good stuff. It's an entirely different presentation for the other guys. Okay? We are entering, who are these other guys that Paul goes to? And does he talk smack about us to them? That's the question. We are at the age of the expert podcast, and I want to see your face on a piece of album art. There we go, a piece of album art that looks like that. So the objections, the buts. But, I can't because, called limiting beliefs. The three big ones are no topic, no audience, no tech. Well, if you remember, you're kind of learning your topic here at Experts Academy. Anybody else watching this video at home without setups going, yeah, but I didn't learn it. Well, you guys did. The no promotion bit, there's a company called Apple that would like to promote you right now. Let them. And then the no tech part, I showed you a microphone that makes you sound like a radio guy. I showed you another microphone that you can plug into your phone. The objections just need to die. Now that we're all the media, what's the name of your show? Tell your neighbor what the name of your show is. All right, I got 10 minutes left, and I only have 107 slides to go, so back up here. All right, the fast hacks. Here are 4 fast hacks about podcasting that you need to consider. These are 4 things that will rapid track your progression in your podcast when you launch it. The first thing is the correct term. I want you to use the correct term. Why does that matter? I'll show you in a second. The next thing is the correct link. The next thing I want you to consider is the CarCast, and then I want you to speak to the call to action. The correct term. Thinking Out Loud with Paul Colligan. The Charge Life with Brendon Burchard. 10X Talk with Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish. YouTube Strategies. What do they have in common? Other than awesome album art, the word podcast isn't anywhere, okay? 2 types of people in the world. Those who know what a podcast is, those who don't. Those who know what a podcast is don't care that it's a podcast. Those who don't know what a podcast is get confused. My mom, to this day, God bless her, I wish I could listen to your stuff, son, but I don't have an iPod. Okay? Don't call it a podcast. Don't limit yourself. Correct term. It's a show. Who the media? You the media. You got a show, not a podcast. The correct link. This is very important. I've seen people try to do #1 runs in iTunes, and they use the wrong link. You go into iTunes, you click on the arrow that's next to the subscribe button, and it says copy link. That's the link that you share. That's the one that Apple counts when they do the charts. Any of the other ones that you get will not get you counted. So go into iTunes, click on the arrow next to the subscribe button. You will get the link to your podcast, the one that you want to share with the world. Do the correct link. The CarCast. So Paul, that thing you did where you plugged in the microphone to the phone, could I just podcast to trips and stuff? Yeah. So you could take time that used to be dead, and I could create content with it that gets published to the world anytime, any place, anywhere? Yes, you could. Do the CarCast. The call to action. This is a big one. We had a discussion about this earlier. The one problem with podcasting, and it's a small one, but the implications are significant. Because it's on demand, because you can listen to it whenever you want to, you know how urgency is. The stuff that demands your attention right now, podcasting doesn't demand your attention. It's way too polite. But as a result, people don't necessarily download or listen to because it's kind of sitting there in the queue. We have iPods now that hold thousands of hours. So what you gotta do is you gotta do a call to action. In your podcast, you have to tell them what to do so they'll do it. Now, I know it's gonna come as a surprise to none of you, but I'm going to be offering a continuing education program when this is over with.